Hello students! In the previous video, we learnt about the author G.L. Fuentes. Let us now summarize the text. The story is about a farmer, Lencho, who has lost his crop due to a hailstorm. He now needs money to be able to afford food for his family. He writes a letter to God to ask him for help. Watch the video to know more. Lencho was a farmer whose crops were destroyed by a hailstorm. Lencho was a staunch believer in God, so he composed a letter to God asking him to send 100 pesos to make up for the loss. He took the letter and put it into the post box in the post office. When the postman read the address on the letter and took it to the postmaster, the postmaster decided to help Lencho. He asked his fellow employees to pool in money for Lencho, and he himself gave a part of his salary. Thus, they managed to collect only a little more than 50 pesos. The postmaster put the money in an envelope and signed it God. The next Sunday, Lencho came to the post office looking for a letter for him. He was not surprised at seeing the money, but he became very angry when he counted the money. He did not believe that God could have made a mistake. So he again wrote a letter to God and put it in the letterbox. Lencho had complained to God about the 70 pesos he had received. He asked God to send him the rest of the money, but not through mail. He felt that the post office employees were crooks and could have stolen the missing money. Now we know what the text is about. Let us quickly describe the characteristic traits of Lencho, the postmaster, and the post office employees. Let's begin with Lencho. Lencho was a farmer who had undying faith in God. When he asked for money from God, he was very sure that God would send him the money. To quote from the text, Lencho showed not the slightest surprise on seeing the money. Such was his confidence. He was an innocent man. He believed that he could write a letter to God, drop it in the letterbox, and get a reply from God. As the text goes, the following Sunday, Lencho came a bit earlier than usual to ask if there was a letter for him. He did not trust people much. He thought that God had sent him the total amount and suspected that the people at the post office had stolen some of it. To quote the text, "But don't send it to me through the mail because the post office employees are a bunch of crooks." Now for the postmaster. He was a sympathetic man. When he read Lencho's letter, he felt sorry for him. He wanted to help Lencho, so he asked his colleagues to collect funds for Lencho. The text says, he asked for money from his employees. He himself gave part of his salary. He was sensitive towards the feelings of other people. He could have directly offered Lencho the money, but he did not want Lencho to feel that they were doing charity. The text says, he put the money in an envelope addressed to Lencho and with it a letter containing only a single word as a signature, God. Next are the employees of the post office. They were considerate people who had compassion towards people who needed help. They laughed over the fact that somebody could write a letter to God, but then they contributed generously to the act of charity. Conclusion. So, what did you learn from this text? The text teaches us to have firm faith in God. It also teaches us that we should be compassionate and sensitive towards the people who need our help. In the words of the Dalai Lama, compassion and tolerance are not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. Recapitulation. In this video, we got to know the summary of the text. We also analyzed the characters of Lencho, the postmaster, and the post office employees. Hello students! In the previous video, we analyzed the main characters. Now let us critically analyze the text and try to understand the narrative style, technique, themes, and the message therein. Critical analysis, narrative style and technique. The narrative style used in the text is third-person narrative. The author talks about a letter that the protagonist, Lencho, writes to God and what happens thereafter. It is mostly a linear narrative. The text starts with Lencho's writing a letter to God asking him for money. He does get the money, but he finds that the money he received is not the entire amount that he had asked for. He complains to God, calling the employees crooks. So everything is in a sequence. Genre. The text is a satire. A satire is a humorous take on the wider issues prevalent in society, like vices, abuses, and shortcomings of people, government, or the society at large. Lencho's faith in God is such that he expects that God would actually send him money. Literary devices. The first literary device visible in the text is a metaphor. When it rains, Lencho calls the raindrops new coins. Children run outside to collect the hailstones. In the text, they are called frozen pearls. There is also a use of imagery. How the fields look when it starts to rain is described beautifully. One can visualize the scene before their eyes in the lines. With a satisfied expression, he regarded the field of ripe corn with its flowers draped in a curtain of rain. Justification of the title. The title of the text is a letter to God. When Lencho's crops fail, he is left with no means to sustenance, but he has firm faith in God. He believes that God will provide for him. Hence, he writes a letter to God asking for money, puts it in an envelope, and posts it. His faith is so unshakable that he goes back to the post office to check whether God had replied to his letter. Lencho feels that God has special ways of helping us, and so he writes the letter. Thus, the title is completely justified. Themes. Faith in God. The text is about the undying faith that Lencho has in God. He expects God to send him money, for which he writes a letter to him. Further, he goes to look for the reply to his letter the next Sunday. Generosity. The postmaster and the employees of the post office were very generous people. When they had read Lencho's letter, they realized his plight. So they generously pooled in money for a stranger so that his faith in God remains intact and his needs are fulfilled. Message. The message that the text conveys is one of faith, hope, and benevolence. Lencho had immense faith in God. He firmly believed that God had sent him the money. Lencho was sure that God would compensate for his loss. When he received lesser money than he had asked for, he again wrote to God and hoped to get the remaining amount. The post office folks were benevolent. They did not know Lencho personally, but they did not shy away from sparing some money to help him. Conclusion. So, what have you understood from this text? The first thing is that one should always think positive. Even in adverse circumstances, Lencho had faith and therefore he could overcome the crisis. The next important learning is that one should not only have faith in God, but should also have faith in humanity. Lencho believed that God would help him, but he blamed the post office people for the missing amount of money. These were the same people who had actually given him the money he had. Here's a quick recap before we end for the day. This video was about critically analyzing the text. It largely focused on the narrative style and technique used. Then it talked about the genre and literary devices used in the text. Then came the justification of the title and the themes. It finally ended with the message the text attempts to convey. We hope that the text, its themes, the message it shares are clear to you. You should try to follow this message in your life. Mother Teresa has rightly said, "Love is not patronizing, and charity isn't about pity, it is about love." Charity and love are the same. With charity, you give love. So don't just give money, but reach out your hand instead. Try imbibing it in your life.